for fun trilogy at the end of the week. So that's my last video of the week. And this is Once Upon a Time China trilogy. Starring Jet Li. I am not going to talk about Once Upon a Time in America, China in America, the spin-off one that went later, because I couldn't sit through it. I tried. It was on the box set that Eureka released. I tried to get through it. It's terrible. I could not make it. I gave up halfway through. Just like, it's not worth it. But the three films that come before are terrific. And I'm probably talking about three films as this trilogy as is one big movie, basically. Because of individual episodes, but it doesn't really matter. You can watch them in any order you want, because there's no connection. It's just like the adventures of this guy as he goes through life and all the rest of it. So the director was Tsui Hark, and there was a 4 and 5 in a TV show as well that apparently weren't as good, and he had different characters as well, and Jet Li wasn't in those ones. But these three, the trilogy were big hits, and basically the second one is viewed as the best of the three, because it is. It's the best one. But they're all great fun films. They're all really, really enjoyable. And it's just the second one is such a high standard compared to the other. I mean, the first one is the film where they were actually still working it out, like what they were about, what the film was about, and, you know, they're trying to find themselves. So you had a lot of plot lines that didn't really go anywhere, that it could have been trimmed, because I'll try to work it out, because you had the Jet Li character, you had his aunt, played by Rosemary Kwan, and then you had this other character who they replaced the actor in the second one, who is trying to struggle and find himself in the world, and he's getting chased by all these gangsters for different reasons, and he ends up always getting in trouble, always causing trouble for Jet Li's character. And it's kind of like he's the second lead, but his character could have been toned down a lot, and it would have been much better for the film. It's like that's the character they could have toned down and moved to the side, and the film would have been a lot better. It's fine the way it is, because you get to see a lot of really good action scenes and things, but it's a kind of flaw in the film where you're seeing material you don't really need to see, so it's about 20 minutes too long, and it's all just, we cut this one character, you're fine. Just perfectly fine. But apart from that, these films are about the set pieces. They are about getting Jet Li onto a location and watching work, or watching stunt doubles work. Because Jet Li had a bad injury early on in this film, so there's a lot of stunt doubles in this one, because he really injured himself. And one of those cases where it was a simple stunt that went wrong, and it wasn't one of the big stunts, it was one of the smaller stunts that did him in, and he was damaged from then on. And he admitted it. It was like a lot of the best stuff came from the stunt people. Pretending to be me. It was just like, he did what he could so you could see him, he could do those poses right, and he did a lot of really good stuff, but there's a lot more of them in the sequels than there are in this one, because he was injured. So there's three plots, basically. The first one is part one really is about imperialism and the dangers of it, and how dark it is, and how they're all connected into the Chinese structure, and how the foreign capitalists are taking advantage of the Chinese. You know, basically the Americans and the British are scumbags, but especially the Americans. Second one, it's all about the nationalists in China as they're trying to kill anybody who's not pure to their ideals, and Jet Li had to go against them. That's one with Donnie Yen. And the third one is about the Jet Li visiting his father and trying to help his father maintain his position while other gangsters are trying to, you know, take over, and how he fights them. So there's three films with very basic plots, but 2 and 3 are stronger because they're leaner, basically. The first one has some really great fight scenes, though. It's just that it's a bit flabby because it's got an excess of character stuff that you don't really need. And there's a lot of comedy that you don't really need. But, so one of the subplots is Jet Li's trying to use the technology and the modern world, and he's a bit old-fashioned, so, you know, his aunt, who basically, is kind of like, she's not really his aunt, she's a relative, but because she's a blood relative, even though he loves her, he can't say anything, and it's just a awkward romance. But the actors play it well. It's just that it's like, it's the kind of human side that works fine. It's some of the other awkward stuff that kind of gets in the way. You know, but the fights in the first one are terrific. There's just so many fight scenes that, as you see them, because they've always tried to kill Jet Li's character off in subtle ways. There's a really terrific sequence at a kind of opera theatre event they're trying to show off, and they're trying to kill him off at the same time because he's a danger to them, and the local Chinese don't like him either because he's too powerful for them, so they're kind of almost conspiring against him. So everyone wants him dead. So this one seems where they're trying to kill him in this showing of a kind of opera theatre thing performance is really fun. And there's a great fight scene at the end where they're knocking things against him and the villain are like throwing stuff against each other in this kind of factory area. So there's lots of really cool stuff. And there's lots of stuff in the boats and things like that in the end of this film that's just terrific. I mean, the end of the action is great. They've also got a very good villain who was a specialist, but now he's down his luck and he's fighting anybody. He's showing off his skills for basically begging money, and he decides he's going to take over again because he wants to be the best, and so that's what will bring him money. So he becomes corrupted and ends up aligning himself with the villains who are with the Americans. So he's a guy that Jet Li has to take down at the end, and it's really great because he is a skillful fighter and it is pretty brutal, and only Jet Li can take him down. It's great. There's also these other subsidiary villains who are the paymasters that have to take down on the boats and stuff, and there's some nice scenes in there, and there's a especially awful villain who's who basically sent his own people to America to be slaves. You know, he's just so scummy, he doesn't care about anybody, and he gets thrown in the oven in the end, which is very satisfying. That's a really good start to the series. It's very enjoyable. It's just a bit long. The second one, the one that really works. The second one is famous for the Jet Li Donnie Yen fight at the end, where Donnie Yen is like the local magistrate who's been manipulating the whole thing because him and his people are trying to hunt down these communists who are in China, who are fighting for the workers' rights and things, and they want rid of them, they want to take them down, so they're hunting them down. So they're using the idea of these white lotuses, who are this cult, who are like extremist nationalists who want rid of all the white people and all the foreigners. They're using that controversy to hide the fact they're hunting for these communists, and they'll do anything they want, anything they need to get them. And Jet Li character gets stuck in the middle of all of this because he's travelled there for a scientific. He's shown off his knowledge, medical knowledge, to these foreign scientists. So as their event gets taken down, and also his aunt's camera gets attacked because it's a sign of foreign decadence, he gets involved and he starts to take them down bit by bit. But it takes him a while, he has to get pushed into it before he finally gets involved. But basically he's trying to help out these people escape from the magistrates. But he's also trying to avoid the White Lotus and White Locusts or whatever. And I think it's White Lotus. And basically it's all an excuse for the fight scenes, but it's interesting though. I mean, it's just interesting to see like the Chinese make themselves the villains, the nationalists are the villains in this one. And the cult stuff is great fun because you see how a lot of them are just frustrated people who have been dragged into this thing. They've been fooled by a lot of like stagecraft and trickery to believe that because they're superstitious, and they also want to believe it because they want rid of all these people who think are the cause of all the problems. And they are to a degree, but they're not the only thing. And so they become an issue that has to be dealt with. And also but more importantly is the own government who actually try hunting other people down, and they will use their this controversy to get up to their own misdeeds. So there's some great stuff throughout it. I mean, all the fights are great. Everything is up a notch. The danger's always there because the villains are always a danger to them. The villains are always a problem. They're always on the verge of doing something nasty, so they have to be dealt with. But also, you have to deal with the government, and it builds and builds and builds till they're hiding out in an embassy, and the embassy is attacked, and that's when everything just takes off. That's when Jet Li's character just like, oh, sod this, I'm going to take them all down. So he takes down Donnie Yen in a terrific sequence with a pole fight that is just as good as the ending of the first one, and then he goes into the White Lotus thing to take down, them. Or was it the other way around? I can't remember. It's just a crescendo of really great scenes where he has to take down the leader of the White Lotus as well, and it's a terrific sequence too. I mean, it's just like scene after scene of great stuff. For the second half of the movie, it's just great stuff. If you're going to watch one of these films, watch this film. This is the best one. It's just so enjoyable. It doesn't even matter what the plot is. It's just so enjoyable watching all this stuff happen. Especially when you get Jet Li and Donnie Yen fighting each other. That's really something special. The third one is Jet Li goes back to meet his father, and there's lots of stuff dealing with a lot of manipulations behind the scenes with the royal family and the influence of the West. And it's all about all that kind of stuff, all the kind of politics and difficulties. But really, it's about how that causes an issue where this one gang is trying to take over all these other gangs and to be the prime mover in the crime world, basically. They're using all that stuff as a cover to take over. And they've got a really strong fighter who's taking everyone down. Then Jet Li visits and finds his father's been injured, the shop's been destroyed, and he's not going to take any crap from this. He tries to be civilized to start with, but it doesn't work, obviously. And also his aunt is now talking to this person he went to school with, who we all know is up to no good, but it takes her a while to realise he's up to no good, and he's a conspirator in this thing. So what this film has, it's not as lean as the second one, but it does have all these dragon fights, basically where they're all in the dragon outfits we see in the Chinese New Year. They're also fighting underneath them. And underneath them, dragons are fighting dragons, and lots of really inventive ways. There's a big finale at the end where they're all in a dragon outfits, they have to rank up this top bit to get this one thing to prove they're the winner. And that's great, it's really inventive. They filmed the whole film was made for this. There's also other really cool stuff, like the guy we thought was a big villain gets injured halfway through because he was enforcer, and then Jet Li actually bets him back to health, and he joins Jet Li because he realises his old people are just horrible. So his redemption arc is really good as well. It's just the whole thing is just so enjoyable. I mean, you've got a hissable foreign villain you want to see, the White Devil. I mean, there's always talking about the White Devil in these films. It's great. As a white person, I love the term White Devil. It's way cooler than most of the other things we've ever been called. I'm okay with White Devil. And it's just wonderful stuff throughout. It's just that the action scenes aren't as good as the second one, but they're still really enjoyable. They're really a pleasure to watch. Just the craftsmanship involved in them and all the difficulties of making them. There's lots of really great scenes. There's one in the middle where it's a set up to the dragon fight at the end, but you're seen in action as they go through the streets doing it. And that's great because all hell breaks loose and there's lots of plots and assassinations within that as well. And it's all great. It's all terrific stuff. And the whole thing is just wonderful. But the whole series these first three films are all really enjoyable. The worst that can be said about them is there's too much comedy, but that's what they're about. And that's mainly the first one. The second and third ones of comedy is a bit more tied in because they've got a running time, they know what they're doing, and it's part of the film. It's not something that takes over a big section of the film like it does in the first one. It's much more like If you don't like the comedy stuff, we'll be on to the action in a few minutes, so just have patience. You know, that's what's enjoyable about them. Everyone knows what they're doing, everyone knows they're playing up stereotypes, it doesn't matter, they're really having fun. The actors are game. They know they're in sort of something that's a bit, it's serious but not too serious. It's like they're making kung fu movies, basically martial arts movies. They know what they're doing. They're trying to be respectful to the culture, the fact that it's based on a real person or a myth of a person who they all wanted to, be like. But there's also a sense of humour. It's a film, so there's a nice balance throughout these films. They're really enjoyable. Jet Li's terrific in the lead. It's probably his most iconic part, really. And it is his part that really suits him well, because it has everything that he does well in it. He's not the most adventurous actor, but given what he does well, something where he can be a bit modest, but very skillful, and have some light comedy, he's really good. So, I highly recommend these films. These are all great fun. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope that got you interested in watching them, because they are just terrific. Right, bye for now. Hope you enjoyed these videos this week. I'll be back soon.